A billionaire Arab buys a beggar woman at an auction to have a child, but what he discovers shocks him. Khalid al-Mansour was the embodiment of power and wealth. At 35, he had built an empire that stretched across continents, with holdings in oil, technology, and luxury goods. His name was synonymous with success, and his presence commanded attention wherever he went. But behind the gleaming facade of private jets and glittering skyscrapers lay a deep void he could not fill. His father's dying words haunted him. A man's legacy is not his fortune, but his family. Legacy. It was the one thing Khalid did not have. Despite his wealth, relationships had always eluded him. Love, in his eyes, was a weakness, a distraction from his carefully curated life. He wanted an heir, but on his terms. No messy entanglements, no emotional obligations. One evening, Khalid's closest advisor, Zahir, approached him with a solution. "There is an exclusive auction," Zahir said as they sat in the plush confines of Khalid's penthouse. "A discreet event. The candidates are vetted, and the arrangements are entirely private." Khalid raised an eyebrow. "An auction? For what?" "For surrogates," Zahir explained. "Women who understand the nature of the arrangement. They are compensated generously, and the child is yours without complications." The idea intrigued Khalid. It was unconventional, but he thrived on breaking norms. The transactional nature of the proposal appealed to his pragmatic mindset. "Where is this auction?" Khalid asked, his tone measured. "It's in Marrakesh," Zahir replied. "Next week. Shall I make the arrangements?" Khalid nodded, a plan already forming in his mind. I end the bustling streets of Casablanca, nor lived a life of survival. At 27, she was well acquainted with hardship. Her days were spent weaving through markets, selling small trinkets or performing odd jobs to earn enough for a meager meal. Noor had been beautiful once, and though her features remained striking, years of struggle had etched lines of hardship into her face. Her once bright eyes now carried the weight of despair, but her spirit remained unbroken. One evening, as Noor sat in a quiet corner of the Medina, a woman approached her. She was elegantly dressed, her demeanor calm yet commanding. "You are Noor, correct?" the woman asked, her voice smooth. Noor eyed her warily. "Who's asking?" "My name is Layla," the woman replied, handing her a business card. "I represent an organization that provides opportunities for women like you." Noor glanced at the card, its embossed lettering catching the light. It listed a location and a time, but no further details. "What kind of opportunities?" Noor asked, skepticism lacing her tone. "The kind that could change your life," Layla said with a knowing smile. Noor spent the night torn between suspicion and curiosity. By dawn, curiosity won. She followed the card's instructions to a sleek office building on the edge of the city. Inside, she was met by a panel of well-dressed professionals who outlined a shocking proposition. "Candidates are selected for a private auction," one of them explained. "The bidders are influential men seeking surrogates for their children. The compensation is substantial, enough to change your life forever." Noor was taken aback. "You want me to sell myself?" "Think of it as a partnership," another panelist said. "You retain full autonomy after the agreement ends. Your participation is entirely voluntary." It was an offer Noor couldn't ignore. The prospect of escaping poverty, of living a life where she didn't have to fight for every meal, was too tempting. After hours of contemplation, she agreed. The night of the auction arrived. Noor was flown to Marrakesh, where she was provided with a modest yet elegant gown and prepped for the event. As she entered the grand hall of the Riad, her nerves threatened to overwhelm her. The room was filled with opulent decorations, intricately carved archways, golden chandeliers, and walls adorned with vibrant Moroccan tiles. The other women, poised and composed, seemed to belong to a different world. Noor felt out of place, but she reminded herself of what was at stake. Meanwhile, Khalid entered the hall with his usual air of quiet authority. Dressed in a tailored suit, he exuded confidence, but his sharp eyes scanned the room with calculated precision. He wasn't here for beauty or charm. He was here for control. When Noor's turn came to be introduced, Khalid found his attention drawn to her. She stood out, not because of her elegance, but because of the quiet strength in her demeanor. She didn't seem to be selling herself. She seemed to be enduring the moment. Their paths were set to cross, but neither could predict how profoundly their lives would change. Beneath the surface of this transaction lay secrets and truths that would challenge everything Khalid believed about control, and everything Noor thought about survival. The Grand Riad in Marrakesh exuded an air of exclusivity, its intricate Moroccan architecture illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns. Guests in tailored suits and designer dresses mingled in the courtyard, their conversations underscored by the gentle strumming of an oud. This wasn't just an event. It was a spectacle of power and wealth. Inside the lavish hall, Noor stood nervously among a line of women waiting to be introduced. Each was dressed in an elegant gown, their makeup and hair meticulously styled. Noor's dress, a simple emerald green provided by the organizers, felt out of place amid the opulence. She clutched the fabric of her skirt, her fingers trembling slightly. She caught glimpses of the bidders through the archways leading to the main hall. Their faces were unreadable, their demeanors calm but calculating. They weren't here for love or connection, they were here for business. In the center of the hall, Khalid Al-Mansour sat at a private table near the stage. His sharp eyes scanned the room, noting the other bidders and the women who had already been presented. Nothing had captured his attention yet. "Impressions so far?" Zahir asked, leaning toward him. "Unremarkable," Khalid replied, his tone flat. "Patience," Zahir said with a sly smile. "The night is young." As the event progressed, the tension in Noor's chest grew unbearable. The organizers had explained the process earlier. Each woman would be introduced on stage, and interested bidders would approach to negotiate terms. The thought of standing before a crowd made her stomach churn, but the promise of a better life kept her rooted. When her name was finally called, Noor stepped onto the stage, her legs shaking beneath her dress. The spotlight felt blinding, and she fought the urge to shield her eyes. The host began her introduction. "Ladies and gentlemen, Noor Zaid, a woman of resilience and quiet strength. Originally from Casablanca, Noor seeks an arrangement that will provide stability and opportunity." Noor lifted her chin, determined to appear composed. She scanned the room, her gaze briefly locking with Khalid's. His expression was unreadable, but there was an intensity in his eyes that unsettled her. Khalid leaned forward slightly, intrigued. Unlike the others, Noor didn't appear polished or rehearsed. She carried an air of authenticity, a quiet defiance that piqued his curiosity. "What do you think of her?" Zahir asked. "She's different," Khalid admitted. "That could be a good thing," Zahir said. Khalid didn't respond. Instead, he rose from his seat and made his way toward Noor, his movements deliberate and measured. Noor's heart raced as Khalid approached. He was taller than she expected, his tailored suit emphasizing his commanding presence. He extended a hand in greeting. "Noor," he said, his voice deep and steady. "My name is Khalid Al-Mansour. May we speak privately?" Noor hesitated, then nodded. They were led to a quiet lounge, away from the noise and scrutiny of the main hall. Noor sat across from Khalid, her hands folded in her lap. "Why are you here, Noor?" Khalid asked, his tone direct but not unkind. "For a chance," Noor replied. "A chance to escape a life I wouldn't wish on anyone." Khalid studied her, his sharp gaze unwavering. "And you understand what this arrangement entails?" "Yes," she said firmly. "I understand the terms." "Good," Khalid said. "I don't want misunderstandings. This is not about love or romance. It's a partnership. You would carry my child, and in return, your life would change in ways you can't imagine." Noor felt a pang of indignation at his bluntness, but she kept her composure. "And what kind of life do you imagine for your child?" she asked. Khalid paused, surprised by the question. "A life of privilege and opportunity. A life where they can achieve anything. And their mother?" Noor pressed. Khalid's expression softened, if only slightly. "She will be respected and provided for. That is my promise." The conversation left Noor with more questions than answers, but she couldn't deny the allure of Khalid's proposal. He was pragmatic, yes, but there was something beneath his exterior. A sense of responsibility that hinted at a man more complex than he appeared. As they returned to the main hall, Khalid turned to her. "I'll speak with the organizers. If you agree, the arrangements will be finalized tonight." Noor nodded, her heart heavy with the weight of her decision. Khalid rejoined Zahir at their table, his expression unreadable. "Well?" Zahir asked. "She's the one," Khalid said simply. Zahir smirked. "I told you to be patient." As the evening wound down, Noor was led to a private room where the terms of the arrangement were presented. The compensation was staggering, enough to transform her life entirely. But as she signed the documents, a sense of unease crept into her chest. She was stepping into a world she didn't understand, with a man she barely knew. Back in his suite, Khalid stared out at the Marrakesh skyline, his mind restless. He had achieved what he came for, yet something about Noor lingered in his thoughts. She wasn't just a means to an end. She was a puzzle, and he wasn't sure he wanted to solve it. Little did he know, the secrets Noor carried would soon unravel everything he thought he knew about control and legacy. The private jet hummed quietly as it soared over the desert, its sleek interior a testament to Khalid Al-Mansour's wealth. Noor sat by the window, staring out at the endless expanse of sand. She clutched the armrests tightly, feeling both awe and unease. It was her first time flying, and the surreal nature of her journey only deepened the whirlwind of emotions inside her. Khalid, seated across from her, was engrossed in a tablet, reviewing documents. He glanced up occasionally, noting the tension in Noor's posture. "You'll get used to it," he said, his voice calm. "I'm not sure I'll get used to any of this," Noor replied, her gaze still fixed on the window. Khalid closed his tablet and leaned forward slightly. "It's natural to feel overwhelmed. But I assure you, you've made the right decision." Noor turned to face him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "That's easy for you to say. You're not the one who's sold your future." Khalid raised an eyebrow, surprised by her candor. "Your future is yours to shape," he said. "I've simply provided the means." The plane touched down in Dubai late in the evening, the city's skyline glittering like a jewel against the night sky. Noor was escorted to a black SUV that whisked her through the city's opulent streets. She barely had time to process the grandeur of her surroundings before they arrived at Khalid's private estate, a sprawling compound of modern architecture and lush gardens. "This will be your home for the duration of the arrangement," Khalid said as they stepped inside. The interior was just as grand as the exterior, with marble floors, high ceilings, and walls adorned with modern art. Noor felt like an intruder in a world that wasn't hers. A housekeeper approached, bowing slightly. "Miss Noor, your room has been prepared." Noor followed the housekeeper down a long hallway, her footsteps echoing in the quiet. When she entered her room, she was struck by its size and elegance. The bed was enormous, the linens pristine, and the windows offered a breathtaking view of the city. For the first time since the auction, she allowed herself to exhale. The following morning, Noor joined Khalid in the dining room for breakfast. He was already seated, reading the news on his tablet. "Good morning," he said without looking up. "Morning," Noor replied hesitantly, taking a seat across from him. A servant brought her a plate of fruit and pastries, and Noor felt a pang of guilt at the lavish spread. "We have a busy day ahead," Khalid said, setting his tablet aside. "You'll meet with a team of doctors to begin the preliminary tests." Noor paused mid-bite. "Tests?" "Standard procedure," Khalid explained. "They'll ensure everything is in order before we proceed with the surrogacy." His tone was clinical, as though discussing a business deal. Noor bit back her frustration, reminding herself that this was the nature of their agreement. The medical evaluation was thorough and impersonal. Noor endured hours of tests, her discomfort growing as the doctors discussed her body as though she weren't present. By the end of the day, she was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. When she returned to the estate, Khalid was waiting in the living room. He looked up from his drink, his sharp eyes assessing her. "How was it?" he asked. "Exhausting," Noor admitted, sinking into a chair. Khalid nodded. "It's necessary. The child's health is the priority. And what about my health? Noor asked, her tone sharper than she intended. Khalid tilted his head, studying her. You'll be cared for, he said simply. You'll want for nothing. Noor didn't respond. She felt like a vessel, valued only for what she could provide. Days turned into weeks as Noor adjusted to her new reality. She attended appointments, followed a strict regimen, and learned to navigate the rhythms of life in Khalid's world. Yet, despite the luxury around her, she felt increasingly isolated. Khalid, for his part, remained distant. He was courteous but detached, treating Noor as a participant in a transaction rather than a person. Their conversations were brief and functional, leaving Noor feeling invisible. But one evening, everything changed. Noor was exploring the estate's library when she stumbled upon an old journal tucked away on a high shelf. Curious, she opened it and realized it belonged to Khalid's late father. The entries were filled with reflections on family, legacy, and regret. One passage caught Noor's eye. Wealth is hollow without love. I chased ambition, but it cost me my soul. I only hope my son learns this lesson before it's too late. Noor closed the journal, her heart heavy. It was the first glimpse she'd had into Khalid's world beyond his stoic exterior. When she confronted him about the journal later that night, Khalid's reaction was unexpected. You had no right to read that, he said, his voice low but sharp. You hide behind your wealth and control, Noor replied, her voice trembling. But this shows me that you're just as lost as I am. Khalid's expression darkened. You know nothing about me. Then tell me, Noor challenged. For a moment, Khalid said nothing. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Noor alone in the grand, empty room. The tension between Khalid and Noor simmered in the days that followed. Khalid was forced to confront emotions he'd long buried, while Noor began to see glimpses of humanity in the man she had dismissed as cold and calculating. But the secrets Noor carried about her past, secrets that even she didn't fully understand, were about to come to light. And when they did, they would shake the foundations of their tenuous arrangement. The tension between Noor and Khalid had become an unspoken force in the house, palpable in every shared glance and passing moment. Noor had grown weary of the sterile routine of medical tests and the isolating grandeur of the estate. She longed for normalcy, for freedom. But more than anything, she longed to understand the man who held her future in his hands. Khalid, for his part, found himself increasingly distracted. Noor's defiance, her quiet strength, and the vulnerability she tried so hard to hide. It all unsettled him in ways he couldn't explain. For a man who prided himself on control, she was an anomaly, a puzzle he couldn't solve. One afternoon, as Noor wandered through the sprawling gardens, she came across a small, secluded gazebo. Inside, she found an older woman tending to an array of potted plants. The woman looked up and smiled warmly. You must be Noor, she said. I am, Noor replied cautiously. And you are? Amira, the woman said. I've been the Al-Mansour family's head housekeeper for many years. Noor hesitated, then asked the question that had been gnawing at her. What was Khalid's father like? Amira's expression softened. He was a complicated man, brilliant, but driven by ambition. He loved Khalid deeply, but he wasn't always present. He placed a great burden on his son. Too much, if you ask me. Noor sat down on the gazebo's bench, her curiosity piqued. And Khalid? What kind of man is he? Amira chuckled. That's for you to decide, my dear. But I will say this, he's not as cold as he pretends to be. He's just guarded. That evening, Noor returned to her room to find a letter on her nightstand. It wasn't signed, but the elegant handwriting made it clear who had written it. Noor, if you wish to understand me, meet me in the study after dinner. I believe there is much we need to discuss. Her heart raced as she read the note. Was this the breakthrough she had been waiting for? Noor found Khalid in the study, seated by the fireplace with a glass of scotch in hand. He gestured for her to sit, his expression unreadable. You wanted to talk? Noor prompted, breaking the silence. Khalid nodded, setting his glass down. You've asked questions about my father, about my life. It's only fair that I give you answers. He leaned back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the flickering flames. My father was a man of immense power and ambition. He built this empire from nothing, but he sacrificed everything to do it. His health, his happiness, even his family. Noor listened intently, sensing the pain behind his measured words. I was groomed to take his place, Khalid continued. But I never had a choice in the matter. He expected perfection, and failure was never an option. And did you ever fail? Noor asked softly. Khalid smirked bitterly. Not in the ways he cared about. But I've failed myself. The conversation was interrupted by Zahir, who entered the study holding a file. Khalid, there's something you need to see, he said, his tone urgent. Khalid took the file and began reading, his expression darkening with each page. What is it? Noor asked, her anxiety mounting. Khalid handed her the file without a word. Noor's hands trembled as she opened it, her eyes scanning the documents. What she read made her blood run cold. The file contained details about her family, records of a trust fund set up years ago in her name, signed by none other than Khalid's father. This can't be right, Noor said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's accurate, Zahir said grimly. Your mother had a connection to Khalid's father. He supported her financially, though discreetly. Noor turned to Khalid, her eyes wide with disbelief. Are you saying your father knew my mother? It appears so, Khalid said, his tone icy. But the nature of their relationship is unclear. Noor felt the room spinning. Her entire life, she had believed she was alone in the world. Now, she was faced with the possibility that her past was intertwined with Khalid's in ways she couldn't comprehend. The revelation drove a wedge between Noor and Khalid. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being used, that her connection to his father was the real reason he had chosen her. Khalid, meanwhile, was grappling with his own emotions. The discovery had shaken him, not because it changed his plans, but because it forced him to confront the legacy of a man he had spent his entire life trying to emulate. Days later, Noor found Khalid in the gazebo, staring at the horizon. She approached cautiously, unsure of what to say. You've been avoiding me, she said. Khalid didn't look at her. Can you blame me? This complicates everything. It doesn't have to, Noor said, her voice firm. I didn't ask for this connection, Khalid. And I'm not your father's ghost. Khalid turned to her, his expression softening. No, you're not. And perhaps that's what scares me the most. For the first time, Noor saw a crack in his armor. She reached out, her hand brushing his. We don't have to let the past define us, she said gently. We can choose a different path. Khalid met her gaze, his eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. Perhaps, he said. But can we escape it? As the sun dipped below the horizon, they sat in silence, each lost in their thoughts. The secrets of the past had brought them to this moment, but it was up to them to decide what came next. Little did they know, the revelations were far from over, and the choices they made would shape their futures in ways they could never predict. The days following the shocking revelation were fraught with tension. Noor and Khalid moved through the estate like two strangers bound by an invisible thread, tethered to a legacy neither of them had chosen. The files Zahir had uncovered raised more questions than answers, and Noor couldn't help but feel like a pawn in a game she didn't understand. Khalid, on the other hand, was consumed by his father's shadow. The discovery of Noor's connection to his family had unsettled him, not just because of its implications, but because of the emotions it stirred, emotions he had spent a lifetime suppressing. One evening, Noor found Khalid in his study, staring at the same journal she had discovered weeks earlier. The firelight flickered across his face, casting deep shadows that mirrored his mood. You can't keep running from this, Noor said, her voice breaking the heavy silence. Khalid didn't look up. Running? Is that what you think I'm doing? I think you're hiding, Noor said, stepping closer. From your father. From the truth. From yourself. Khalid slammed the journal shut and rose to his feet, his eyes blazing. And what truth is that, Noor? That my father's mistakes have tainted everything I've built? That I'm doomed to repeat them? No, Noor said firmly. The truth is that you're more than your father's mistakes. But you'll never see that if you keep letting his legacy control you. Her words struck a nerve, and Khalid's anger gave way to something deeper: pain, vulnerability. For a moment, he seemed like a man on the verge of breaking. The next day, Khalid surprised Noor with an unexpected proposition. "We need answers," he said. "About your mother. About her connection to my father. I've arranged for us to meet someone who might know the truth." "Who?" Noor asked, her heart pounding. "A lawyer who handled my father's estate," Khalid replied. "If anyone knows the full story, it's him." Their journey took them to a quiet office in the heart of old Dubai, a stark contrast to the gleaming skyscrapers that dominated the city. The lawyer, a dignified man in his 60s, greeted them with a warm but guarded smile. "Mr. Al-Mansour, Miss Zaid," he said, gesturing for them to sit. "I must admit, I didn't expect to see either of you here." "We need the truth," Khalid said bluntly. "About my father's relationship with Noor's mother." The lawyer sighed, folding his hands on the desk. "Your father was a complicated man, Khalid. Ambitious, driven, but also deeply sentimental. He met Layla Zaid during one of his trips to Morocco. She was unlike anyone he'd ever known. Kind, resilient, unafraid to challenge him. Were they in love?" Noor asked, her voice trembling. "Yes," the lawyer said. "But their relationship was doomed from the start. Your father's family wouldn't have approved, Khalid. And Layla knew she could never be part of his world. When she became pregnant, she made the decision to raise the child alone." Noor's breath caught. "Pregnant?" The lawyer nodded. "But the child didn't survive. It was a stillbirth." Khalid and Noor exchanged stunned glances. The revelation shattered their assumptions, replacing them with a deep, aching sadness as they left the office. The weight of the truth hung heavy between them. Noor felt a deep sense of loss for the mother she had never truly known, while Khalid grappled with the realization that his father's life had been far more complicated than he had understood. Back at the estate, Khalid retreated to the library, pouring himself a glass of scotch. Noor found him there hours later, sitting in the dark. "You were right," Khalid said without looking at her. "I've been hiding, not just from my father's mistakes, but from my own." Noor sat beside him, her voice soft. "We all carry burdens, Khalid, but we can't let them define us." For the first time, Khalid looked at her with unguarded eyes. "I don't know how to move forward from this," he admitted. "You don't have to do it alone," Noor said, placing her hand over his eye. In the days that followed, something shifted between Khalid and Noor. Their interactions became less transactional, more genuine. Khalid began to open up, sharing stories of his childhood, his struggles, his dreams. And Noor, in turn, shared her own journey, the hardships she had endured, the resilience that had carried her through. Their bond deepened, not out of obligation, but out of understanding. They were two people shaped by loss, searching for meaning in a world that had often been unkind. But as they began to navigate this new dynamic, a final revelation loomed on the horizon, one that would test the fragile trust they had built and force them to confront the ultimate question. Could they create a future together, or were they destined to remain prisoners of their pasts? The tension in the Al-Mansour estate had softened, replaced by an air of cautious optimism. Khalid and Noor, once locked in a transactional arrangement, now shared a bond forged through shared pain and discovery. But as they began to piece together their futures, a final revelation threatened to upend everything they had rebuilt. One afternoon, Noor was exploring the estate's archives when she came across an unmarked box tucked away in a corner. Inside, she found a stack of faded letters, each addressed to her mother, Layla Zaid. The handwriting was unmistakably Khalid's father's. Heart-pounding, Noor read through the letters, each one a testament to a love that had endured despite insurmountable odds. But it was the final letter that stopped her cold. "Layla, I know I cannot undo the mistakes I've made, but I want to ensure that our child, and you, are cared for. Enclosed is a deed to a trust in your name, but more importantly, a plan to secure our child's future. If anything happens to me, I've instructed my son, Khalid, to honor this promise." Noor stared at the letter, her emotions a storm of disbelief and confusion. She had spent her life believing she was unwanted, a burden. But here was proof of a love and commitment she had never known. Clutching the letter, she sought out Khalid. Khalid was in the garden, reviewing documents with Zahir. Noor approached, the letter trembling in her hand. "Did you know about this?" she demanded, thrusting the letter toward him. Khalid took the letter and read it, his expression darkening. "This is the first I've seen it," he said after a moment. "You expect me to believe that?" Noor said, her voice rising. "Your father made you the executor of this trust. Did you ignore it? Hide it?" Khalid's jaw tightened. "I had no knowledge of this letter or the trust. But if what it says is true, then I failed you, Noor. And for that, I'm sorry." Noor's anger faltered at his genuine apology, replaced by the ache of unresolved emotions. Determined to make amends, Khalid launched an investigation into the trust mentioned in the letter. What he uncovered left both him and Noor stunned. The trust, worth millions, had been hidden in a dormant account, untouched for decades. But beyond the money, Khalid discovered records of his father's efforts to support Noor's mother even after their separation. He wanted to do right by her, Khalid said quietly as he handed Noor the documents. Noor's eyes filled with tears. "I spent my whole life thinking we were abandoned, that no one cared." Khalid placed a hand on her shoulder. "You weren't abandoned, Noor. You were loved. More than you know." As the revelations settled, Khalid and Noor faced a pivotal decision. What would their futures hold? The arrangement that had brought them together no longer felt relevant. Their relationship had evolved into something far more complex, more meaningful. One evening, as they sat in the gazebo, Khalid spoke. "Noor, I've spent my life chasing control, trying to shape the future in my image. But you've taught me that life isn't something to control. It's something to share." Noor met his gaze, her heart pounding. "I don't want this arrangement anymore," Khalid continued. "I want something real, a partnership. Not because of obligation, but because I care about you." Noor's breath caught. "Are you saying?" "I'm saying I want us to build something together," Khalid said. "Not just for the child we plan to bring into this world, but for ourselves." Months later, the Al-Mansour estate buzzed with quiet excitement. Noor and Khalid had chosen to redefine their relationship, not as strangers bound by a contract, but as partners building a life together. Noor's confidence grew as she began to find her place in Khalid's world, using her strength and resilience to inspire those around her. Khalid, in turn, learned to let go of the shadows of his past, embracing a life of balance and vulnerability. Together, they laid the foundation for a legacy built not on control, but on love and understanding. Years later, their child, dark-eyed and curious, a perfect blend of Khalid and Noor, played in the estate's gardens under the warm Dubai sun. Khalid watched from the veranda, his arm around Noor. "Legacy isn't just about wealth," he said, smiling at her. "It's about the love we leave behind." Noor leaned into him, her heart full. "And for the first time, I feel like we're creating something worth leaving behind." The past had brought them together, but it was their choices that had built their future.